All right. Welcome everyone to the presentation today on blood sugar, insulin resistance, and weight issues. So I know I have Kaushika right now who's joined, and hopefully more will join. But in the meantime, I am going to start the presentation, and hopefully the ones who could not join can watch the recording later. So I know it was supposed to be a little bit of more interactive presentation, but it's just me and Kaushika at this point of time. So I'm not going to focus too much on these slides. And so the whole purpose of this presentation is not about discussing any of your personal health issues, but it's more about education, about blood sugar, insulin resistance, and weight issues. And I know a lot of you had asked about issues around weight and sugar cravings and carb cravings and even salt cravings, and all of them have a link to blood sugar and some level of insulin resistance. A lot of people do not understand what insulin resistance is, and they think that they are either pre-diabetic or diabetic when they get that, and that's not true. A lot of people today, I would say almost 6 to 7 out of 10 people today have some level of blood sugar imbalances and insulin resistance going on. And that is at the root of some major health conditions, which we do not realize that it is because of that. And so hopefully by getting this information, it'll motivate you to take better control of your health and think twice before you pick up maybe a food which you think is healthy, may not be, or think twice about picking up something which you know is not that great for the body. So that is going to be the purpose. For those of you who are watching this recording and do not know much about me, I'm a functional nutritionist. And I've got my certifications here in Canada and in the States as well. And I have been in the field of using food as medicine for the last more than almost 10 years. And the reason I'm in this field is I'm very, very passionate about bridging a gap which has come up in the healthcare industry today. That first of all, the healthcare industry, we all know what is the situation with the doctors and with our hospitals, that they just do not have the time to really understand why the person is unwell, why there is disease, and they do not even have the resources for that. So that gap, which requires us to understand why is it that we have an imbalance in our body, why is it that we are sick, that gap needs to be taken care of. And there are a lot of alternative health practitioners who are doing that, who are bridging that gap. And that's the reason why I've also taken this up as a career, because I think there is a need to bridge that gap, especially when it comes to diet and lifestyle, because those are the foundations of health. And I do integrate the wisdom of my own traditional culture of Ayurveda with modern nutrition practices. I'm a self-taught, self-researched fan of Ayurveda, because there's so much that modern nutrition is researching, which comes from there. That wisdom is there. And today we have science, which is proving that, yes, what they said is correct. And some quirks about me: I eat a piece of dark chocolate every evening after dinner, most of the evenings actually. And I love hiking in the forest. I prefer walking in the forest, even if it's raining or snowing, rather than walking in the gym or walking on a treadmill. And what I have a strong belief about is that life is continuously evolving, and so are we, as in we change, we evolve based on what exposures life throws at us and what different opportunities and experiences life gives us, and that helps us evolve. And so is the field of nutrition as well. It's constantly evolving, and it's a very dynamic field. So that's a little bit about me. And now, as I said, this was supposed to be an interactive session. So is sugar addictive? And because it's not too many of us, we'll see if Kaushika wants to unmute and answer.
Yes, it's very addictive. It's very addictive. In fact, I just made some peras, and
Yeah.
I just
It's
can't
very
stop eating
interesting.
sweets. But I
Most
did get the dark chocolate after your last seminar, and I try to eat that when I get the sweet cravings.
Yeah.
And it's slowly going away. I'm not sure for how long it's going to last, but yeah, I still have that craving all the time.
Oh, yeah. We'll see. I'll tell you why those cravings are. But yeah, sugar is very addictive. And the problem that has happened is over time, it's not sudden. And sugar gives you a satisfaction which we all really enjoy. The problem is not with the sugar, and because it is a very important macronutrient, or it's a very important element of our body. as a nutrient of the body. The problem that has happened is the way we are eating or consuming sugar today. So in today's times, the sugar is basically refined and ultra processed. It is not what 50 years ago or 70 years ago, the way our ancestors were consuming sugar. I mean, we all know we used to have desserts used to be made at home. The pedas that you're talking about, there was no refined flour. I mean, we've seen the last 50 years, it's been different. The problem is not with just making those desserts once in a while. The problem is that even your main course, even your regular food has become so processed that it has impacted the body, that once in a while when you were eating those treats, which was completely fine, has become a problem for the body. And when we talk about sugar being addictive, this refined and ultra processed sugar is so addictive. It is considered equal to the kind of addiction which cocaine creates. It's like it has a neurochemical reaction. And that's why you see when you have little kids who basically are living on sugar, candy, and juices and everything, how the minute they have a blood sugar drop, the minute after half an hour, 45 minutes of eating all that, the blood sugar drops. And I'll talk about it in detail what happens. And they'll throw tantrums. They'll get very upset. And that's the kind of addiction sugar creates in our brain. So if kids go through that, imagine what adults go through. That we crave carbs, we crave sugars, we crave having those frappuccinos at Starbucks or drinking those pops and Pepsis and colas and everything. So it does give you a dopamine and an adrenaline boost in your brain. So it has become very addictive, especially the kind of sugar that we are consuming now in the processing industry. So any guesses here, Kaushika? How much sugar? Do you drink Starbucks frappuccinos?
Actually, no, I don't.
Okay. So would you like to guess how much sugar does a grande, which is a medium-sized Starbucks mocha frappuccino, contain?
My husband is saying 7 teaspoons.
Okay. 12.5 teaspoons. Close to what is there
Oh
in
my God.
Coke. And you see how many teenagers, when there is a deal in the summer, they go on 50% discounts. You have to see the lineups for these frappuccinos. So that's what they're getting every time they drink 12.5 teaspoons, every time they drink a frappuccino. How much sugar do you think a 4-finger bar of Kit Kat have? And remember, this is not solid chocolate. It's got wafers in between. Any guesses?
7 teaspoons. I'll stick to that.
It's 3.5 teaspoons. So a better version. Okay, this is a green smoothie. This is a brand which we see all the time, even at Costco or grocery stores. And it's basically a smoothie, no added sugar. It's made with kiwi fruit, apples, some spinach, some kale. How much sugar do you think this one will have?
So this is all natural sugar, I presume, right?
Yes, it is natural sugar.
Maybe 4 teaspoons.
13.5 teaspoons. It's got 53 grams of sugar. So it is healthy sugar because it is basically from fruits and vegetables. It's fructose. It's not a problem in case you do not have any blood sugar imbalances or any insulin resistance, and if your body knows how to break this down. But the problem that is happening is if you do have, then this is also adding to the problem. How much sugar does 1 tablespoon of ketchup have? Typically, this is 2 teaspoons, 1 tablespoon of ketchup. It's 1 teaspoon. So typically that 1 sachet, when you go to buy McDonald's fries and they give you those little sachets of ketchup, that's what 1 tablespoon is. And it has 1 teaspoon of sugar. Okay.
Wow.
How much sugar does a cup of pure mixed berry juice, no sugar added? How much do you think 1 cup of this juice would have?
13.
6.5 teaspoons.
So I thought the naked at 13.5. So
so the thing is, because berries, again, no sugar added, berries are lower in sugar as compared to kiwis and apples. Apples actually are high, but definitely that one has a lot more kiwis and maybe some pineapple or something, which is giving it that high sugar. But berries in general are one of the lowest sugar containing fruits. Okay, let's move ahead.
You said apple is high?
Sorry, give me 1 minute. I'll just send my dog out. I should have let him out earlier. Anyway, so yeah, you were saying something, Kaushika?
Saying so apples have a lot of sugar, more than berries, I know, but
No, apples are considered a low glycemic food. They're not very high in sugar.
okay.
So as a fruit, if you're looking for fruits which are lower in sugar, berries and apples are a good choice. Okay.
Okay.
So after showing you all this, you realize all these foods which I showed you are basically carbohydrates. And so does that make carbohydrates bad because they all break down into sugars? Would you like to take a
No,
guess?
it's false.
It is false. You're very right. Alcohol is a carbohydrate.
True.
Are you guessing or do you think?
I'm guessing.
It is true. Alcohol is basically a carbohydrate. It's derived from a carb and it is basically fermented. And so it loses pretty much all its sugar. So most of the alcohols do not have sugar. The only problem happens if this alcohol is mixed in fruit juices or any high sugar drinks or additions. And that's when it increases the sugar. But the problem happens, alcohol is only broken down by the liver. And if you have insulin resistance, we will talk about it, how it impacts your liver, then alcohol becomes a problem. I just want to make sure nobody else is trying to sign in. So I'm just looking at my messages in case anybody has responded. Okay, no. All right. Your body can convert multigrain bread into a fat and store it in your fat cells. True or false?
Multigrain, I'm a big fan of multigrain, so I might just say false.
It is true. Again, your body has the ability, if it needs to, or if it has reached a certain level of insulin resistance, it can convert anything that you're eating into fat and start depositing it in your fat cells. So I will explain how this happens. So it is true. 50% of the people 50% of the people who wake up in the middle of the night, and this is not people who just get up to pee, to use the washroom, but 50% of people who wake up in the middle of the night have blood sugar imbalances. True or false?
False.
No, it is true.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's because your brain is functioning, your liver is functioning, and those organs need need sugar to function. And your liver is capable of breaking down any of the food that you have consumed. It stores it and then it breaks it down. If that mechanism, how it breaks it down and takes care of your requirements of the brain and liver and all other parts, if it's not working properly, then you will wake up in the middle of the night. Some people wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and cannot go back to sleep. And it's not that they have to use the washroom. It's because their blood sugar has dropped. And as a result, their body goes into a stress mechanism. It produces cortisol. And that's when they have this issue. And a lot of people who wake up in the middle of the night have this. It's not that they want to use the washroom. Okay. So, all these point out to that it's not sugar which is a culprit. There is a lot more going on, that even sometimes if you bring your body to a point where it has developed certain imbalances, and the mechanism which it uses, how it converts healthy foods into a source of energy, when that whole system is damaged, then anything that you eat can be a problem for the body. And that's what is called insulin resistance. And I'm going to break that down, but it is very important to understand that any chronic health condition that you may have is not linear. The cause is not one. You as a human being is made up of a lot of things that happen around you, which we call your terrain, your mental state, your relationships, your stresses in life, what is happening. Maybe you're stressed about your job. Maybe you have problems going on with your children. All those matter. What is happening with your genes? What is the genetic history? Maybe you're a family which has diabetes or cardiovascular conditions running in the family. So that's a part of your terrain. Your knowledge and awareness. In fact, one of the reasons why you're attending this presentation is to become more knowledgeable and aware of how to improve your health. So a lot of people are not even aware about so many things that they're doing could actually be harming them, and they're not in their benefit. And of course, what you eat, because diet is one of the biggest pillars of health, and your lifestyle factors, all that. If there is not much movement in your body, which is very important, a human being is actually made to move. It's very, very important. And if you have a very sedentary lifestyle, at some point of time, it is going to creep up and it is going to create issues. So the reason I'm saying this is that we are going to be talking only about one aspect. So do not just assume that that is the only aspect which is causing where you are, in case you have any condition or in case you're experiencing any symptoms. There's a lot more. In a 1 hour, 1.5 hour presentation, it's very difficult for me to break down everything else. But we're going to be focusing basically on the dietary aspect today. So, and the reason why I picked up blood sugar imbalances and insulin resistance is because these are actually, that is the most important dietary factor for chronic health conditions today, especially which are related to metabolic rates. So anything to do with cardiovascular conditions, anything to do with weight issues, anything to do with diabetes, anything to do with hormonal imbalances. We're even talking about certain kind of cancers, because the sugar feeds the cancer cells. So your immune system, all that at some point of time is impacted because of blood sugar imbalances. And if you have developed some insulin resistance, they are at the root of those conditions. And we're going to break that down, but it's very important to understand what this concept is. So what really is blood sugar? So blood sugar is nothing but sugar which is circulating in your blood. Very simple. Every time you eat food, and most of the times it's glucose that circulates in your blood, and it comes from the carbohydrates, because that's how nature has made it. Carbohydrates are a source of sugar. Fats are also used as a source of not sugar, but as a source of storage form. And there are other roles that fats play in your diet, and we will talk about that later. And then you have proteins, which are basically used as building blocks for new cell generation, for enzymes, for messenger cells, and for repair work. So that is what proteins are used for. But food is a lot more than just macronutrients like carbs, proteins, and fats. It has a lot more involved in the whole body, but we're not going to go down in that direction. We're going to focus on blood sugar today. So the reason why it's very important to understand how sugar is broken down and absorbed in the body is because it is our main source of fuel. And each and every cell of your body basically uses glucose or sugar in the blood to convert it into ATP, which is your currency for energy. Like if your heart is pumping at night or pumping throughout the day, it is using the sugar which is circulating in the blood for the cells to produce, the mitochondria and the cells to produce energy, which is also measured in terms of ATP. Your hands, your limbs, your face, your nose, your lungs, everything, your liver, your brain, everything uses this source as a source of energy. And it's very important that it is balanced. When I say it's very important, it is balanced. You go to a doctor and they tell you, okay, get your blood work done and check your blood sugars. You do it by giving a little bit of blood and they check and measure it. Your body doesn't have a way to measure. It has an intelligence, an intuitive intelligence, where it knows what is considered low and what is considered high. And it is always striving to make sure that your blood sugar remains within a certain range. Now, because of science, which has made it has given us some kind of average, we know that fasted blood sugar should be between 60 to 100. Like when you get your blood sugar checked between in the morning, if you have not eaten for 10 to 12 hours, it should be between 60 to 100. The body doesn't have a way to measure it. It has an intelligence where it knows what is low and what is high. And it tries to bring it to there. So it has mechanisms in place to make sure that if your blood sugar drops, it'll do something, that it'll release sugar, which has been stored in the fat cells or in the liver, to make sure that there is more blood circulating in your, more sugar circulating in your blood. And if it goes very high, it produces insulin, which will make sure that the sugar is taken out from the blood and is sent to where it needs to go, to the cells. And I'll talk about what happens really. So if you are experiencing low sugar, which is below the level, below the average, let's say below 60, it's called hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. And typically, if your body is not able to repair it on its own, because it has the intelligence, if it is not able to repair it on its own, you will feel shaky, you will feel nervous, you will feel that you need to eat something. And this is different from low blood pressure, it's low blood sugar. And you may feel even dizzy. And it happens sometimes, but if it is happening frequently and you need to constantly keep eating to make sure, that means that mechanism which the body has where it brings it in balance or homeostasis is got impacted. That means you're developing some kind of a blood sugar imbalance. That's called hypoglycemia. If it goes very high level of blood sugars, when it goes very high, you get an adrenaline boost. Remember, I said sugar can be addictive. Too much of sugar creates the same kind of an experience as cocaine does. So again, it gives you a dopamine high. You feel really charged up and you feel really stimulated. And that's a short-term thing. If your blood sugar remains very high for a longer period of time, that is when you become diabetic or you get hyperglycemia, and you can die with constant high levels of blood sugar. And that's the reason the body has a mechanism in place. And that's the reason sometimes how people get diagnosed with diabetes is that they may pass out and their blood sugar is checked and then they realize that they're hypoglycemic or they have developed diabetes. So that means that mechanism of producing insulin is got damaged. So if there is one thing that you want to take away from today's presentation, let it be this graph. It's a self-explanatory graph, but I'm going to break it down and make it clear on what is a blood sugar imbalance that a lot of people are experiencing today, especially with kids. It happens, we see it all the time. We see it with adults as well. So what is this graph showing is on the vertical side here, on the left vertical side, is basically your blood range, your level of blood sugar. And on the horizontal side is a time. And from when you eat and how your body breaks down that blood sugar. So this is a graph. And when I said between 60 to 100 is your average fasted blood sugar, we're not going to talk about those levels because those are pathological range. What I'm more concerned is for you to understand what happens when you eat food. So these two lines, which is the green dotted lines, is where is the optimum or the homeostasis or the balanced level where your blood sugar should be constantly in between these two lines. So this is the stage where you've woken up and your blood sugar is within that range. And this is the point where you've eaten food. So this is the eating point, and you have three different curves here. There is this red one, which is a very high spike, and then very sharp drop. This curve is typically, that means, when this is very high, that means the blood has a very high level of sugar, because whatever you ate or drank or whatever food you had very high level of sugar. And this is typically when you're having a high sugar food, like maybe a smoothie, which was very high in sugar, or maybe typically when you have pop, like a Coke or a Pepsi, which has 14, 15 spoons of sugar, and it has nothing else to balance it. We call it empty calories. Basically, what it has is sugar and nothing else, no other nutrient. This is the kind of spike which you will get, and look at the time duration. Within 45 to 50 minutes, it has dropped to a point which is below your average blood sugar, where it should be. And this spike is the most harmful one. When little kids have just plain candy, this is what happens in their blood sugar. They have a spike like that, and then within 45 minutes, their blood sugar will go down and they'll become cranky and they'll need something again. So this is something to remember, that you want to avoid this kind of a high and drop. And then you have this orange one, which is still higher than where it should be, but it is lasting over 2 hours before your blood sugar goes below where it should be. And this curve is typically refined carbohydrates. When I say refined carbohydrates, that's typically white flour or maida, or pizzas or burgers, white bread, typically those kind of foods which do not have too much of fat and too much of fiber in that meal. When you have that kind of a meal, it'll still not give you a spike like that, but it is still not within the range where it will be a slow curve, which I will talk about. And it'll take maybe 2 hours or a little longer before it goes down. And then you have the third curve, which is the blue curve here, where it will never happen that it goes above the range or it goes below the range. And look at the time duration from it, how it has remained within a certain range where it needed to be, and it's 4 hours. And that is how you need to be. And this is typically a meal which has whole grains, which has a lot of vegetables, which has some portion of meat and lentils and a lot of fiber. And so when you have a meal which is completely balanced, full of nutrients, multigrain bread or whole grains, and a lot of vegetables, a lot of dals, and home-cooked whole foods, this is the kind of blood sugar breakdown that will happen. And that is what you need to aim for. So what happens when you have spikes like this? They're always short-lived, because the minute you get a blood sugar spike like that, remember, the body will not allow you to have that. So it has a mechanism in place where it'll start producing insulin. And when it goes down like that, the body will when the blood sugar goes down, really, what happens is your response is that you become very weak, you become jittery, or you get cravings and you will start eating more. And as a result of that, I'm just allowing somebody to enter. And as a result of that, you will, sorry, Ritu's just connecting. Yeah, and as a result of this drop, you will typically, whether it's this orange curve or whether it's this red curve, typically what is going to happen is you're going to reach out for either something which will give you that spike, that kick. And people who are working in the offices, they feel this slump and they reach out for stimulants like coffee, or they'll eat something which will give them that energy right away, like maybe cookies or donuts and muffins or things like that, which is again a wrong choice. So it's very important that you do not start your mornings like that. And so so this is a level of blood sugar roller coaster based on how you eat. What's important to understand is that if this is happening just once or twice in a week, it's not a problem. The body has the ability. But if this is the kind of diet you're eating constantly, like morning, evening, afternoon, then over time, you develop what we call insulin resistance. And I'll explain to you how that happens. But before we go on there, it's very important to understand what is insulin really. I mean, we hear about diabetics taking insulin injections, but what really is insulin? And we're not talking about diabetics here because this presentation is not focused on them. It is for all of us who are experiencing some level of insulin resistance. So insulin is a hormone which is produced by the pancreas. Don't worry about the science. But what does insulin do? That is what is very important to understand. Insulin is a hormone. It's like a messenger, a watchman, which transports the sugar to your cells and to your liver. So it's the carrier which takes the sugar. Actually, the blood is taking the sugar, but it's what is called the controller of that sugar, and it allows it opens the cells doors so that the sugar can be absorbed into the cells. And it is also what takes or allows the liver to absorb the sugar and do whatever it needs to do with it. And every time you eat food, insulin is released, because that is the mechanism that the body has in place to transport that sugar. And why are you eating? Because you need to produce energy. Each and every cell in your body, every muscle of your body needs the sugar. And that's the reason insulin is produced every time you eat food. Now, insulin is produced other times as well. So it's not just food. So interestingly, now research is showing that even if you start salivating, like if you think of, let's say, something which you're really fond of, you're fond of rasmalai, or you're fond of some food and you start craving it, even those times your body can produce insulin. And if you've developed some level of insulin resistance, that production of insulin also can harm the body. So that's the level, that's the power of our mind, that it is possible that you can produce insulin even when you're not eating, and even if you're just thinking about food. And constant high levels of insulin is the problem, because it creates insulin resistance. And that is what causes most of the metabolic health conditions today, including fatty liver, including cholesterol issues, including high triglycerides, including hormonal imbalances. So how does insulin resistance happen? So let's go down to understanding how does insulin resistance happens. So remember I said each and every cell is basically going to absorb sugar, which is circulating in the blood. And every time you eat, your blood sugar then has to remain within a certain level. And the insulin is produced the minute your blood sugar is going up. So let's see, if you're eating multiple times, or if you're eating a diet which is very high in sugar and constantly, let me go back to a graph which will make it easier. Let's see this one. So I have this graph. So you see the spikes. You're eating breakfast, your blood sugar goes up, which means your insulin goes up. It goes down a little. Just maybe 2 or 3 hours later, you eat lunch, your insulin goes up. Then again, you snack, your insulin goes up. Then again, you have dinner, your insulin goes up. Again, you have a snack, your insulin goes up. So what's going to happen? Let's think. Now, this was maybe a flatter curve that your insulin was not going up and it was remaining within range. There will be no issue with that. Let's see, you're eating refined carbs, or you're eating high sugar foods, or you're eating foods which have 12 and 13 teaspoons of sugar, added sugar. And your nutrient load in that meal is not very high to slow down the release of that sugar. What's going to happen? The spikes of the insulin are going to be very high. So at some point of time, your cells are going to say, I have enough sugar in me. I cannot keep opening the door. I'm so tired. Constantly insulin is coming and knocking, that open your door so that the sugar can go in. But the cells are going to say, no, I have enough sugar. I'm tired of opening the doors. I'm not going to open it anymore. And that is called insulin resistance. Your cells start saying no to sugar, no to insulin. And it starts at that stage. So what will insulin do? If the cells are saying no, the insulin will say, okay, let's just take it to the liver, because the liver can store the sugar. And so the insulin will take it to the liver. And what happens? The liver will then take in the sugar and start converting into a storage form. And typically the storage form of sugar in the liver is called glycogen. And it's a fat, but it's a fat which can be broken down very easily. So the liver will take it, keep taking it till it can become full. And if your blood sugar keeps going up because of the food that you're eating, or because of multiple other reasons like stress or whatever, stress has a huge role to play, because every time you have high spikes of stress, again, the insulin is produced. When the insulin is produced, it is going to take the sugar away from your blood and take it to the liver. At some point of time, the liver is going to say, I cannot take more. So when the liver says, I cannot take more, and it's completely full and chock-a-block, think of liver as a balloon. When the balloon cannot take in any more air, it can burst. But in the body, the liver is not going to burst. What it does is, that's when you develop fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver. And what it's going to do is, it's going to start releasing the excess sugar back into the bloodstream. And then it'll start circulating again. And in order to take care of that excess insulin, the brain will get a signal, oh, the liver is not being able to take anymore. The cells are also not taking it. Let's produce more insulin and push the cells more. And there will be more sugar in the circulating in your blood, and the body will start producing even more and more insulin. And this doesn't happen in a day, in a week, in a month. This happens over years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And that's when you develop insulin resistance. So your muscles can develop insulin resistance, your liver can develop insulin resistance. So once you develop insulin resistance, it is not a problem of just consuming carbs or sugar. It becomes a problem of eating food in general, because what your body does is, it starts basically whatever you eat. You may be eating the best of foods at that point of time, but the mechanism has got spoiled. it's got damaged, it needs to be repaired. So anything that you eat, even if you're having a fresh green smoothie, which I had showed you earlier in the presentation, which had 53 grams of sugar, even when you eat that, that's one of the healthiest foods that you can have, because it has all the micronutrients and the vitamins and the minerals and all, and it has natural sugars, which is fructose. But once you've developed insulin resistance, even that sugar is going to create a problem in your body, because it is leading to an insulin increase, and all your cells are already full. And so for a certain number of years, what the liver starts doing is it starts converting any kind of sugar that you're eating, any kind of protein that you're eating, any kind of fat that you're eating, it starts converting it into fat, and it starts circulating in your bloodstream. And that's when you get high triglyceride levels. And your cholesterol levels go up, because the liver is just converting. It doesn't know what to do with it. And so when people have high LDL levels and high triglycerides, and they think it's the fat, it's not the fat. It's the body converting whatever you're eating into fat, because that's the only way it can keep storing it. And once you develop that insulin resistance issues, that's when it becomes a problem to even lose weight, in spite of you not eating enough food, in spite of you going on low carb diets, in spite of you trying to exercise. And that's where you will lose, when you go on keto diets or when you do intensive diets and everything, you will lose the weight for a certain duration. You will lose your first 10, 15 kilos, but there is insulin resistance. And that's when the last little bit becomes a problem. So you need to really repair your insulin resistance before you can lose that. So I'm going to stop here and just check, was this clear? If I know, Ritu, you joined late. Did you understand what I was talking about? Okay. Kaushika, was it clear? I just want to make sure that I explained it and it was fine. No other questions?
Yes, no, I think this is a total awareness to us, because I really didn't know that all about this resistance thing,
Yeah.
Especially after and when after it goes to the liver, it's just like, wow.
Yeah. And
No.
people are not being told, because our doctors just don't have the time to explain this to the patient or to somebody, because they just don't have the time or the resources. That, listen, they tell you, okay, start eating, start exercising, start eating better foods. But what they do not tell you is that it's not, you've reached a point where you need to do more than that. It's about controlling. How do you break that cycle? Because insulin resistance pretty much becomes a vicious cycle, and it becomes very difficult to break that cycle. So what happens is, every time you're going to eat food at this stage, after you've been diagnosed with something or you know something is going on, every time you may be even eating the best of foods, it's going to make a difference at very short pace of time. So you have to be very patient with it. And what happens is, every time you eat food, the body is going to make insulin, because that's a natural response of the body. And your cells are resistant, your liver is resistant. What is it going to do? It's going to start converting everything you're eating, maybe the best of foods. It's going to convert that into fat. And as a result, your cells, because your cells are resistant, they're not going to get the instant source of energy, because the cell is not taking the sugar you're eating. It's getting converted into fat. But at the same time, your cells needed that fresh energy from the food. You're not getting it. You feel tired and fatigued. And you keep craving, because you're not getting that satisfaction, because the cells are not getting the food. So again, you will eat food because you'll crave, you're tired, you're hungry, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. And nobody's telling you you need to break that cycle. So how do you really break that cycle? So that cycle cannot be broken down by doing any extreme diets. It cannot be broken down by going on keto diets, or it cannot be broken down by doing extreme exercises, because that's also a stress. Every time you produce stress, your body will produce insulin. So it's very important to understand the mechanism and typical signs of, and I'll talk about how to break that cycle. It takes time, but it can be broken. Typical signs of insulin resistance, as I said, it happens over 5 to 10 years, is if you are waking up in the morning and you're not feeling rested and recovered, because your body's ability to break down sugars and make energy is damaged. That whole process needs to be repaired. You're craving sugar or carbs. Typically, even you've eaten and you still feel hungry, you still crave, you still do not feel satisfied. You feel tired or sleepy after meals. You've eaten something and then you start feeling sleepy within half an hour. That means whatever you've ate, your body did not absorb the energy, the cells did not get the energy, that you're feeling tired. You crash after lunch, you need coffee and stimulants. That's a sign that your body does not have a constant supply of energy, of sugar. That's the mechanism, which is a balanced mechanism where the body knows how to maintain homeostasis, and you have difficulty in falling asleep. So that's another sign of insulin resistance. There's a lot more, but those are the most common ones. And then what happens when you have insulin resistance? As I said, it takes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It all depends on your own body's antioxidant load, on your own body's resilience to deal and cope with it. It depends on how much stress you have, how good you are at coping with stress. Also, life throws a lot at you. So everybody's situation is different. Somebody has a very smooth life and all their problems are they've had a very bad lifestyle in terms of diet. And then you have somebody who's had a very good lifestyle and they eat clean, but their life has just been full of stresses. And that person will also experience insulin issues, insulin resistance issues, because the stress also produces high levels of insulin. So when I had said in the beginning that it's not linear, it is very important to understand that you're made up of multiple factors which are impacting how you respond to different parameters in your life, how you respond to your diet, how you respond to your lifestyle, what are your genes telling you. So in this presentation, we're just focused on the dietary aspect, but it's a lot more which can impact why you are where you are. So it's very important to understand that don't carry the guilt. That's the reason I give these presentations, that you become aware and pick it up from when you understand how your body is functioning. So when you develop insulin resistance over time, typically, depending on what is the weakest link, what is it that your body's immune resilience is getting low on, that is what is going to get impacted. Liver is one organ which is getting impacted for a lot of people today because liver is a powerhouse. It is the one which is responsible for detoxifying all the toxins. And look at the level of toxins that we have in our environment today. The chemicals in the food, the chemicals in the air, the pollution in the air, anything, your natural, like the products you're using for cleaning, for washing, for your personal care, your hair care, everything has some level of chemicals. And the liver has to convert that and deal with that. Liver is also supposed to metabolize your hormones, your cholesterol. Liver is supposed to balance your sugars by storing what is needed. So it's a powerhouse. That's why every 50 days your liver regenerates. The reason is because that's the intelligence of the body, that it has provided that intelligence that your body creates a new liver because the cells are so they're so charged up all the time. They're doing so much. That's why a liver performs 500 functions in a day. It's one of the most powerful organs doing that kind of work in a day. It's the powerhouse. So that is the one which is going to get impacted. And I can tell you 8 out of 10 people have issues with the liver. I, who follows such a good diet and a lifestyle, and I'm aware of so much, still experience liver issues. Because in Ayurveda and in traditional Chinese medicine, we say when you have a liver which is very high with toxins or is stressed or is heated up, it impacts your eyes. And my weakest link is that. So even in spite of that, as I said, there are a lot of other factors which can impact. So liver is which will get impacted the first with insulin resistance. Then you have hormonal imbalances because liver is again responsible for balancing the hormones. PCOS typically has insulin resistance at the root, apart from other things. High cholesterol levels with high triglycerides. As I explained, what is happening, everything that you're eating, the liver is converting into fat and it is circulating. That's what triglycerides are basically, and high cholesterol levels are, especially LDL. That's high levels of fat circulating in your blood because whatever you ate, the liver is converted into fat. Fat around the abdominal area that doesn't budge is even with exercise and even with low calorie diets, is again because of insulin resistance over time. So it's going to take a long time to budge. A lot of input is required. And of course, diabetes, this is how it starts, that everything breaks down and the body's insulin levels, because your pancreas stopped producing the insulin. And that's when you develop blood sugar, that mechanism has broken down. And then slowly and slowly, you need insulin from external sources. And that's how diabetes kind of deteriorates. So how do you repair insulin resistance? First of all, you need to be very patient, that it's not an instant solution. What has happened in the body has taken 10, 15, 20 years to where you are today. So the number one aspect is diet. Very, very important that you eat only a whole foods diet. Do not listen to diets. Do not go in for shakes. Do not go in for, this is how you will lose weight. This is how you'll focus on dropping this. And very important, every meal, you make sure you have a protein. And when I'm saying protein, does not mean it is a protein heavy meal that you stuff your plate with a lot of eggs and a lot of meat, or basically you're eating chicken. That's not the way. The protein requirement is not more than 20 to 30%. Remember, even with protein, your insulin is going to spike. What is important is having a balance. So protein is very important. It spikes insulin, but protein, when you eat protein, what it does is it allows the stomach to produce certain kind of hormones which promote satiety. So when you eat protein, when you feel satisfied, you're not going to have cravings. That meal is going to last for longer. So very important to have 20 to 30% of your plate as a protein. It can be a vegetarian protein, or it can be a meat-based protein. Does not matter. Get a clean source of protein. Do not look for processed proteins. Do not look for a meat patty which has been processed in a plant or anything. Get clean sources of protein. Eat fat. Very important. Again, fat is your storage form, and fat has the ability to increase your metabolism when your body picks up. And we're going to be doing something. When I talk about the lifestyle, I'll tell you how very important to eat good quality fat, because first, it again gives you satisfaction. Fat makes anything tastier. Fat is also responsible for generating certain hormones in the body, which will give you that satiety. Fat rarely slows down the release of sugar. So I'm not telling you not to eat carbs. You need to eat whole carbs, but when you combine them with fat, the release of that sugar is going to be slower. Again, that will give you the ability that you do not snack quickly. You do not eat. You're satisfied and full for 4 to 6 hours, and that is what you want to do. You do not want your body to have a spike of insulin. You want a slow release of insulin so that those spikes are not there. Because the higher the insulin, the more the insulin resistance. So you do not want spikes of insulin. So eat fiber. One of the biggest things that you can change in your diet is add more fiber. Multiple reasons for adding fiber, and fiber comes from plants and fruits and whole grains. But again, you need to know that the maximum good quality fiber, again, I shouldn't say good quality, but the more variety of fiber you have in your diet, especially from a lot of plants, the better for you, because this kind of fiber is feeding your gut bacteria. Now, we have such a huge amount of information which is available today that having certain strains of bacteria actually can fight insulin resistance. It can fight how your body's ability to break down sugars and convert them and throw them out of the body. So you want to increase fiber to feed the right kind of bacteria. They fight inflammation in the body. They fight inflammation in your liver. They fight inflammation in your heart. So you want to feed them. So that's why diverse kind of fiber is very important. Secondly, fiber again will slow down the release of sugar. We all know because it adds bulk. The fiber is not the tastiest source in the plate, but it is important because it slows down again the release of sugar and carbs. And fiber basically comes from carbohydrates because it comes only from plant-based foods. Animal-based foods are nil. They have zero fiber. So when we talk about eggs, or when we talk about meat, or when we talk about dairy, there is no fiber in them. So very important to incorporate plant-based foods in your plate, in your diet. And fiber also add bulk. That means After your food goes from your stomach and your small intestine, where pretty much the breaking down of the sugar and the absorption of nutrient happens, after that, the food goes into your colon. Fiber is not broken down. Fiber is what will prevent you from getting constipation because it adds bulk to the food. You want to make sure that the liver, whatever toxins it produces, it is going to throw it into your colon. If you do not have enough fiber, that toxins stay in your colon and further create problems and burden on the liver. You're trying to repair the liver of the resistance. It does not want to be overburdened. So fiber helps create that bulk so that you're able to eliminate the toxins and make sure that you're not constipated. So very important to increase fiber. Fourth, when you eat carbs, only eat complex carbohydrates. Basically, again, it comes down to eat carbohydrates which have fiber and fat in them. Again, they give you satisfaction. When you eat a samosa, which does not have much, you will enjoy it. It gives you that flavor and that fat and the salt and the refined carb feeling, and it gives you that satisfaction, but it's very short-lived. And you want to avoid that, especially till you can repair your mechanism. And once you reach that, then you can enjoy these. But when you are in that mode of repairing your insulin resistance, you have to be very firm and very disciplined for a while till you can repair that. So that's when it comes to your diet. Do not go in for shakes, meal replacements, ketogenic diets. None of that is going to work in the long run. They provide you short-term relief, but they're not really repairing what you need to repair. Second thing, and that should be for each and every meal. Second thing, how to repair insulin resistance when it comes to your lifestyle aspect is intermittent fasting. Very important, because when you restrict your diet, you're eating the right kind of foods. And when you're restricting the diet, you're preventing the insulin spikes for the whole day. So insulin resistance develops, one, when there is high sugar in your diet. Secondly, the spikes are very frequent. And thirdly, your body does not get a break. So it's a question of high sugar over a long period of time without giving the body's mechanism of repairing itself a break. Intermittent fasting allows that for the body, it gives the body a break so that it can repair the mechanism. So very important that you intermittent fast and you start where you need to start. If you're hypoglycemic, that means you get a sugar, if you get a low blood sugar and you cannot function, then you need to first repair that. We work through diet. You may need to be on a low carb diet for a while with very high fiber and high fat, where your body learns how to use fat as a source of fuel when the sugar is very low. So first you repair that, and then you start intermittent fasting. And you need to do intermittent fasting following the circadian rhythm. That means night and daytime. You follow the sun. Our body's clock is synced with that. That means you do not eat at 11 in the night. And then because you've eaten at 11 or 10 in the night, you cannot eat for 12 hours or 14 hours or 16 hours. That means your next meal is going to be at 3 o'clock. That's the wrong way of doing intermittent fasting. So very important to follow the circadian rhythm and do intermittent fasting based on that, and slowly increase it to what you need to. And it's very individualized. We see how to make you work with that. The second thing, movement and exercise. A human body is made to move, made to exercise. That's the reason why we produce ATP. That's the reason why we produce energy. That's how we are made to function. It's just with mechanization and with modernization, we've got machines, but we've seen the minute we were doing a lot of physical labor, our parents, grandparents, they used to do a lot of physical labor. All these metabolic related, lifestyle related issues were never there. They used to fight infections with flus and all those things, but they were not fighting diabetes the way we are. They were not fighting obesity and things like that. So our bodies are made to move. Please introduce movement, whether you do it in a gym, whether you go outdoors, even if you visualize. Like I have spoken to a client, not a client, it's a client's parent who's paraplegic, as in they're on a wheelchair constantly. And even visualization of movement helps. Even sitting on the chair and moving your fingers helps because that's movement for the body. So it's not just going to a gym or running or anything. Movement is very important. So depending on where you are, start and slowly increase. Sleep on time. Cannot speak enough about sleeping on time. The reason being because your body can repair only when you're sleeping. There's certain growth hormones, there's certain repair hormones which are produced only when you're in deep sleep. There are 4 levels of sleep. Only in the 3rd and the 4th level is when the repair happens. If you're not getting deep sleep, that repair is not going to happen. You're doing everything right. You're eating the right kind of diets. You're intermittent fasting, but you're not sleeping. It's still incomplete. That whole system which is needed to function and to support your body is not there. So sleep on time, very important. And manage stress. As I said, if you have stress, the body produces insulin because that's its mechanism. The minute you're going to be stressed, your blood sugar is going to fall because you produce cortisol. When the body produces cortisol, it automatically forces the liver to break down any stores and release blood sugar. The minute you're going to get stressed and there is sugar in your blood, insulin is going to spike. If you have insulin resistance, a spike of insulin without any food, just because you've got stressed, is killer. So very important to learn how to manage stress after you've developed insulin resistance because it's going to aggravate your situation further. So very important to manage stress, whether you do breath work, whether you do meditation, whatever you need, learn how to manage your stress, build your stress resilience. The big baddies. Again, as I had said that you basically clean up your diet, you eat only whole foods, you do not eat any processed foods. But there are 4 things. I know what I'm expecting is like an extreme condition of a spectrum. With our lifestyle, it becomes very difficult. You need to reach a point where at least you start doing and slowly incorporate those things. But something to avoid, read labels. At any cost, avoid high fructose corn syrup. These are the names of high fructose corn syrup which are on labels. Glucose, corn syrup, glucose fructose, maize syrup, isoglucose, tapioca syrup, fruit fructose, crystalline fructose. The minute you see those names, please run away from that because fructose it basically comes from fruit. But when you have insulin resistance, especially high fructose corn syrup comes from corn. At that point of time, even fructose from fruits or from corn syrup, that can only be broken down by the liver. It is not broken down like normal glucose in the body. Your liver already has resistance. So even if you eat fruit, the liver is going to convert it into fat. So I'm not saying do not eat fruit. That's a certain way. There's a certain way that we restrict fruit and then slowly introduce it once you have repaired a certain level. But high fructose corn syrup, just run away. Do not consume anything which has high fructose corn syrup because that can only be broken down by the liver. Aspartame, also known as a sweetener replacement, NutraSweet Equal, it's a neurotoxin. The body does not recognize that. It is bound to increase your insulin and it's a chemical. You want to, again, avoid that. Sucralose, also Splenda. It is again in diet drinks, diet cokes, low calorie drinks. All of them have something which is added. They may say the name, they may not say the name. Just remember, anything which says low calorie, anything which says diet, anything which says 0, do not consume them. You're aggravating your insulin resistance and blood sugar balances even more. And saccharin. Anyway, saccharin is banned in Canada, but it is still being used in India. A lot of products, especially processed products, namkeens and candies and all, use saccharin in India. So be very careful when you get candies and all these desserts and small sweets from India because they basically have saccharin. That's again sucrose and fructose, the worst kind of, because they've banned it here because it has carcinogenic properties. So just run away from these big baddies. Basically, do not look for a sugar replacement. In conclusion, it's basically, as I said, it's not that difficult. It just requires hard work and discipline, but you can reverse it because it's basically managing lifestyle and diet because these conditions have come up because of the processing industry, because of our change in the food habits, because of the exposure to toxins, because of our lifestyle becoming more sedentary. So these are the factors which have brought us to where we are, and it can make a huge difference if we can change these slowly at the foundation level. So I'm just going to stop recording and stop sharing as well. Oh yeah, there is one more screen. So yeah, I know it's not a big group because a lot of people are going to see this recording, so I'll just share this. So the next one coming up in December is on arthritis and joint health, and the 14th Jan 1 is going to be on intermittent fasting. And that is, in case you're interested in learning more about the right way of doing intermittent fasting, I would suggest join that. And then I have again on gut issues coming up on gas, acid reflux, constipation. And in March, I'll be doing a spring cleanse. I'm also working on a program, a group program, to work with a small group of people in the new year to reverse blood sugar imbalances and insulin resistance. So if you're keen to come on board, it'll be my pilot program. So I will be offering a 50% discount on that, and a small group where we meet once a week for 90 minutes. And so we create accountability. Every week, you're going to get certain steps. There's no homework as such, but it's all about introducing certain ways of changing and shifting to how you eat and creating an accountability around it. And again, I'm not saying in 6 weeks, I'm going to change your insulin resistance or I'm going to cure you or treat you. That's not my job. I'm not even a doctor, so I'm not even allowed to technically use the word heal or treat. All I'm going to do is send you in that direction where you start making those changes. And for 6 weeks, hold your hand in order to be able to do it. And we form a small group. The maximum I will probably allow in that group is 12, so that I can have a one-on-one, that close contact, and we all create that bond and have accountability and support each other. And it's like you're allowed to be vulnerable with that group, because whatever stays in that group. So if you're interested, send me an email, and we can discuss about that if you're interested, or if you know of anybody who will be interested in that, do let me know. I'll stop sharing and stop recording now, because most of the information which the others will need is on this recording.